Good evening, everybody. It's so nice to see everybody. Thank you for tuning in on a Thursday evening. For those I haven't met, my name is Kevin McAvey, and if you liked what you heard as we've been talking about the past few weeks, you can thank the one and only Selena Guerrera. Selena actually helped to design our first intro music ever for this podcast, and out of her own goodwill and participation in the process, and I'm very thankful. And when I asked Selena what I could do and to repay her, she said to give a plug to her organization where she's on the steering committee, Westchester Progressives, an important community within our larger Democratic Party where they're building a progressive movement. The Westchester Progressives is a community-driven political organization dedicated to advancing equity, accountability, and people-centered policy throughout Westchester County. They bring together residents, advocates, and leaders who are committed to building a more just, transparent, and inclusive local political landscape. If you want to learn more about them, check them out at westchesterprogressives.org. Selena, we're proud to have her as a new Democratic district leader in the town of Bedford. And thank you again for designing our intro music and for all that you do. Today, I want to remind you to start out with why are we here? The purpose of this live stream and this series, highlighting local leaders and rising stars through our community, is to equip New Yorkers living in the lower Hudson Valley, New York 17, with information about the issues impacting our communities and helping us to identify how we can get involved and who we want to represent our concerns and values in government. For those I haven't met, hi. It's never more important than now to know who your messenger is, so I always try to be as transparent as possible. I'm Kevin. I'm a husband, a father of three, Bedford resident, New Yorker, born and raised, a Democrat, good government advocate, and healthcare policy expert. As you see in the picture up on the top, that's my baby girl, and she does nothing wrong. But on the right, as of this morning, I'm also the recipient of a Data Pioneer Award awarded by my peers across states across this country, and I couldn't be more proud. And the field is rapidly evolving, and I am privileged to get to work with so many states to help our public sector meet the evolving needs in our landscape and address its evolving challenges. And on that note, I just wanted to pause to say a little bit about AI. AI, it can be a tremendous opportunity for all of us, and it also presents tremendous risks. For those who do not think it's going to interrupt and disrupt our workforce in significant ways, you're not paying attention. Not yet. Like the advent of the computers, AI has the potential to change how we do business, how we work, what jobs we need, and how we maintain full employment in an economy that's going to look very different 20 years from now than it does today. If we are not pressing, particularly our congressional candidates, on these questions of how they plan to adapt and put forward policies that prepare us for a changing economy and a changing workforce, I think we're missing a great opportunity to ensure we are equipped with the leadership we need moving forward. So we're here to discuss the issues, foster community, and introduce the candidates. And I'm really proud to be able to introduce one of our local candidates today. For those who are interested in the congressional race, I'd encourage you to check out our YouTube channel where we have live interviews with Kate Conley, Beth Davidson, Mike Sachs, Effie Phillips Staley, and I've personally met John Capello, and there are links to where you can see him at several of our community forums. We've actually met out in the field, and some of those interviews can be quite revealing as you're getting to know your candidates. I also want to note that the primary is heating up. We're about 7 weeks away or so from primary day on June 23rd, and the polls are starting to come out, and they're going to change week to week. But the one that came out earlier this week had Beth Davidson at 26%, Kate Conley at 15%, and Effie Phillips Staley at 8%. I'd encourage us all to kind of take a lot of these polls with a grain of salt, as there are miles to go between now and the end of the primary. And also, there's a lot of noise that's going to be entering our field. Introducing the noise. On May 5th, the poll came out showing Beth in the lead. On May 6th, Mike Lawler attacked Kate Conley for her military service, which is absurd given that she's a national hero and we are all indebted to her for the commitment she's made in her life of public service. And this is coming from a representative and a president who have never served. Yesterday, the attacks continued, this time on another candidate, Effie Phillips Staley. And this time, as of this afternoon, President Trump started getting involved in our race. It's game time. This is a national race, and the future of the balance of power in Congress very much depends upon races like ours. And so I would not be surprised if we saw a visit from President Trump and the amount of heated rhetoric picking up both among our Democratic colleagues as well as from Representative Lawler as he tries to interfere and set a new balance in the race that he might find favorable. Less than 7 weeks to the primary, June 23rd, early voting. A couple weeks before, starting June 13th, we'll have many other reminders. And then after that, hopefully, we'll be one unified team in pressing to take back our congressional seat in the lower Hudson Valley. This, again, is part of the local leaders and rising stars. We're putting our congressional discussion largely on the sidelines. We've spoken with Emily Simonis. Last week, we spoke with Courtney Fields from Empire State Voices, where she spoke about the devastating votes that our congressman has taken on healthcare access in this country. Today, we're going to bring it down local to Yorktown. And one of my favorite guests, Jann Mirchandani. Next week, we're going to be going up to Putnam County, where we'll hear from Brett Yaris, who's running for county supervisor. And we'll have a couple more interviews from there as we lead up to the primary. But today, we're here to talk about Jann. And it's my privilege to be able to introduce someone who I think knows Jann for a little while, Chuck Newman. Chuck Newman is a 39-year Yorktown resident and a 1983 graduate of Colgate University, my alma mater, which makes me particularly excited for this gentleman to be our introducer. Chuck began his insurance career as an agent of Connecticut Mutual Life in 1991. With the help of his wife, Carol, soon formed Charles Newman Company. For more than 30 years, the company has served as a broker and advocate for individual life and disability insurance, group health insurance, and PEO services. Charles Newman Company was acquired in 2021, and Chuck continues to serve as an independent insurance broker. He's past president of the Lakeland Education Foundation, as well as the First Hebrew Congregation. He served on the board of trustees of Peekskill's Paramount Center for the Arts, a great venue if you haven't been up there, and the Hudson Valley Gateway Chamber. He's a member of the Peekskill Yacht Club, has served on the board of trustees of Volunteer New York. He loves to mentor young people in sales and businesses and has done so for the Westchester County Launch 1000 program. In 2017, he was honored by the Westchester County Bar Foundation for his years of service. 2022, recognized by the Hudson Valley Gateway Chamber of Commerce as Business of the Year. And in 2023, he was honored by the Clearview School and Day Treatment Center for its service and support. He and his wife, Carol, have been married for more than 40 years. God bless Chuck, and reside in the Yorktown home that Carol's parents moved into in the early 1960s. If you want to know about Yorktown, I think we have two folks on today, starting with Chuck, who can probably answer all of our questions.
Thank you for that introduction, Kevin. I appreciate it. And congratulations on your Data Pioneer Award.
I know it was, thank you. I'm not a big emotional person. I I choked up.
You might be the first Colgate alum to have received that Data Pioneer Award.
Maybe I should write that in the alumni newsletter. But it's so nice to meet another Colgate
Thank you so
grad
much.
and not too far. And like you've lived in Yorktown now for 40 years?
Yeah, just about. This actually was this month in May.
Yeah.
We moved in 1987
Hmm.
into our starter home.
Hmm.
It's a little bit north of where I'm living now,
Hmm.
kind of closer to Shrub Oak, but it was still designated as Yorktown Heights. And then 6 years ago, 5.5 years ago, after my father-in-law passed, we moved into the house that my wife grew up in here off of Baldwin Road in Yorktown.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, it's
So,
wonderful, and we're very blessed to be here.
so you've seen Yorktown change a bit.
A little bit, it's been well, I mean, over 4 decades. You would imagine any town is going to change, and there's been a lot of growth throughout northern Westchester, so that's part of the story. But one of the things that certainly to the positive is that we've developed open space opportunities for people to hike and bike. We've got the North County Trailway that goes through Yorktown. One of the former folks that managed our trail system said that we actually have 600 miles of trails in Yorktown, which is
I
kind of
I didn't I would
mind-boggling.
never guessed it.
Never guessed it, but I try to get out on all of them and on a regular basis. So
That's
that's really been an amenity for Yorktown. But one of the things that we're seeing now is just a lot of growth, and the infrastructure just isn't built for it.
yeah, and
Just a lot of congestion.
does that create like challenges? So is it built around transportation? Is there any rhyme or reason for where things are built?
This I can't speak with. Most of the density in town is either in the hamlet of in Yorktown Heights. Yorktown, the town, has many different hamlets. There's Shrub Oak and Jefferson Valley, Yorktown Heights. Kitchewan, I think, is one of the in Mohegan.
Hmm.
So these are all these different places. Sometimes it's a corridor like Route 6 corridor or Route 202, where you've got big box stores and a fair amount of density, commercial density.
Hmm.
But in the town of Yorktown, in Yorktown Heights, where the central business district is, we've just got a lot of shopping centers, kind of one into another. And the roads coming into town just tend to be bottlenecked these days. And you spend a lot of time sitting at traffic lights.
Yeah, I've actually experienced this personally. It's like I've gone to both the mall and I think there's a bowling alley there that we
That's
frequent.
right. I forgot the Jefferson Valley Mall. Yeah.
And like Google Maps actually starts to steer you away from the main corridors because
Mm,
they get so backed up. So you wind up going through a lot of these neighborhoods, which I don't think is probably ideal for folks who are living in
it
those
is,
neighborhoods.
and yeah, there are a few pass-through neighborhoods that I think have lobbied to have Waze or Google Maps take them off
Hmm.
as those kind of cut-throughs. Although
Yeah.
locals know how to cut through on them, and some of them have resorted to having speed humps because just there's just too much volume going through their neighborhood. These
Yeah.
are these are residential family neighborhoods. So that's really to your question. That's the thing that's changed the most is just that density and the feeling of congestion that I don't think we had years ago.
So you think that it would be beneficial to have development that serves residents and is designed around residents' needs?
That would really make sense, and
Hmm.
to hold the developers accountable to assisting the town in putting in those infrastructure improvements, and leveraging the fact that it's a desirable place to be. We have great schools in Yorktown. We have these amenities I
You
talked
do.
about before, the open space, plenty of shopping.
Hmm.
It's really a question of leveraging that against what the developer's wishes are. And I know firmly believe that Jan is the person to do that,
Yeah.
which is why she's got my support, and I've been working hard for her.
When did you first meet Jen?
It has to be somewhere around 15 years ago. Both in
Hmm.
our respective businesses, we both worked in nonprofit circles quite a
Hmm.
bit. And anyone who works with nonprofits and keeps showing up and really does the work with nonprofits for the right reasons, meaning you want to make sure nonprofits are well served, that they don't spend a penny more than they have to, because it's so hard for them to raise money and to get grant money for projects. And Jann is that person. She has the right ethics. She has the right mindset. She's smart and she's very energetic.
No.
We just kept running into each other at nonprofit events, at the chamber events, and became friends over that long period of time.
Nice. Well, I'm going to bring her up next, but is there a
Sure.
question you'd want me to ask Jann in our conversation today?
Wow. Well, Jann is now running in her fourth race. So to me, is how does she do that? How does she have the stamina, the energy to be able to put that work in? Because I'm going out, I get petitions signed. You have to have a certain amount of motivation to do that. But to run in a townwide election for the fourth time, that's energy, and that would be my question. How?
Energy, grit, perseverance. We're gonna ask. Yeah. Chuck, thank you so much for coming on.
I really appreciate you having me on. It's my pleasure.
Looking forward to seeing you at Reunion.
Thanks, Kevin.
Bye. So with that, she's back. Jann Mirchandani brings 25 years of business ownership experience to Yorktown's leadership. She's a founder of Westchester Marketing Cafe, a certified women's-owned business. She knows firsthand what it takes to build something from the ground up. Before launching her own company, she spent a decade in the financial services industry working with international asset management firms. Her leadership extends to nonprofit governance, where she served as a trustee managing a $4 million private trust. She's led a task force that developed funding solutions to close a $3.2 million budget gap, overseeing both the communication and implementation strategy. Her commitment to community, particularly in Yorktown, runs deep, with 35 years of nonprofit board service focused on youth leadership, education, and business development. She currently serves as an executive committee member of the Greater Hudson Valley Council of Scouting America and has served on the board of the Hudson Valley Gateway Chamber of Commerce. She's equally passionate about lifting others up, which she does consistently. And I can't wait to actually talk to Jann again. Hi, Jann.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
So I think we have to start out with Chuck's question. Time number. Time number 4.
Question. No, actually, it's a good question. So, how do I keep doing it? Honestly, I think he sort of answered the question a little bit in his background and of how we know each other. It's the mindset, right? It's not like, oh, it's a new campaign cycle. Oop, got to ramp up. It's like, this is just kind of how I do what I do, right? I remain engaged. I pay attention to what's going on in my community.
Yeah.
Try and speak up if I feel like I have something that needs to be said, and try and be that voice. So although it is a lot of shoe leather, I'm not going to lie. Last year, I think we hit about 6,100 doors or something in that ballpark. So yeah, it's just kind of keeping it going, and one foot in front of the other.
And I'm back.
I was getting a little paranoid. I'm like, is it
No,
my, is it
no,
my
I'm,
connection?
I'm, I'm sorry. I think we got a little
No,
like
listen,
power
technology is
flash
great
right
when it
here.
works, but you know, when it
Yeah.
doesn't.
So you were saying that you're doing this for the fourth time,
Yeah,
and I think you're also. I mean, it reminds me very much of like Joe Bonanno. Like he actually went up for town board a number of times, and every time he did, he was able to meet new people and
yeah,
expand the circle.
that's exactly
Especially
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
especially in areas where we haven't had candidates like you in a long time. Sometimes
yeah.
it takes a little bit to crack
Yeah.
the ice.
Well, and that's it. I mean, and you know, my business has really taken me throughout the county.
Hmm.
So I always, you know, I sort of pride myself on my reputation being very good and very strong throughout the county. But I had to build all those personal relationships outside of my core network here in Yorktown. So I
Hmm.
kind of had to, you know, expand beyond, you know, my scouting circle. I had to expand beyond my business circle and get into other pockets of the community that I hadn't really been in before.
And why is it so important for someone like you and the perspective that you're going to bring to serve in this role as supervisor? What's lacking right now that you have?
You know, I have to say honestly, without, you know, I don't
No,
know,
no shade, but like you,
no,
there are different.
exactly. No,
There,
no shade,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
just feel like there's a lack of leadership. I really
Mhm,
feel like there's a lack of vision.
mhm,
You know, I'm a serial volunteer. You know, both of my parents were teachers. My father was a volunteer fire commissioner for, you know, 2 decades upstate, you know, where I grew up. You know, mom was always involved in the PTA and different activities and so forth. So that was sort of the model that I grew up with, and you know, so I've been in, you know, and Chuck said, you know, nonprofit leadership for, you know, 35 years. And when you don't have leaders who are kind of looking down the road, anticipating, you know, where we're going to be in 10 years, um, it's a problem. And more to the point, if you don't have leaders who are looking down the road and saying, okay, well, we're anticipating that this is the problem that we're going to have, let's start working on a solution now, and bringing in collaborative voices. They don't necessarily have to agree at the outset, but you know, you need to bring people together, and I think that's really what we're lacking right now.
yeah, and last time you were here, if I recall correctly, you were talking about the need for a strategic plan, right?
Mhm.
Like a refreshed kind of vision for the community
Right,
that plans could then be implemented around in a
right,
rational way that reflects
right.
community values. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, very, very much so. I mean, so, you know, I think in our last conversation, I had mentioned that, you know, our comprehensive plan came out with the first
Hmm.
iPad, you know, and as
Hmm.
we're talking
Yeah.
about, you know, the technology and how technology changes
Hmm.
and can be a challenge,
Hmm.
um, you know, are we, so, you know, we have to make sure that that comprehensive plan still reflects the direction that we want to move in,
Yep.
that it reflects the challenges that we're facing with, you know, sustainability
Mhm.
and you know, hardening our infrastructure for, you know, for the challenges of the day, you know, meaning, you know, sustainability
Yeah.
and you know, weather events and so forth. And you know, so is it reflecting the reality that we find ourselves in? Is it anticipating where we want to go down the road? And are we using that as a benchmark? You know, we if we're not measuring all of the projects and everything that we're doing against that comprehensive plan, you know, that becomes a problem unto itself.
And so,
Are you freezing or am I freezing?
Jen, so like I'm always fascinated. I think it might be my internet, and I apologize. But
Okay.
like, so as we're thinking about like a comprehensive plan and a new vision for Yorktown, I'm always fascinated by the causes leaders in our community take on and why. When it
Right.
comes to business development, community development, what are Yorktown's strengths and opportunities, and what do you see as its challenges?
Yeah. Well, listen, Yorktown is a fabulous place. And, Chuck talked about, our green spaces and our trails. We have, FDR Park right here, inside of our borders with miles of trails. In fact, we have many Eagle projects that have extended the trail system in FDR Park. That's part of really what makes us so special. And we're right in the heart of the Hudson Valley. That's also part of the challenges where we are geographically. We've got the Taconic that runs north-south. We have routes 202 and 6 that run east-west. And because of where we are, part of the opportunity, but also the challenges, our location is very attractive to big box retailers and high volume retailers. And so what that does is it sets us up potentially, if we're not mindful, of becoming, Paramus, where it's just high volume retail, people from outside of our community coming in, shopping, and then driving, and we're bearing the burdens of that without necessarily benefiting from it.
Yeah.
So, our geography is both our challenge and our opportunity. I really want to make sure that when we're focusing on our development, that we're focusing on redevelopment and using what we have, and kind of backfilling our existing commercial space, rather than taking down, our green space and which makes us so special.
Yeah, and actually kind of building around community needs, making sure we're incorporating our local voices into the process versus like external voices from just kind of leading with the business's edge.
Well, it's, when you develop at all costs, when you're not looking at it as a collaborative effort with developers, and you're not really working with developers so that it becomes a win-win proposition, then you kind of get what you get, and oftentimes they just steamroll you, like literally and figuratively, right?
Yeah.
They just pave right over, and they obviously want to make the most money that they can. That's their job. That's their that's the business, which I understand. But we also have a lot of opportunities for the commercial buildings that we have that are vacant. And I think if we can start to focus our incentives, our tax incentives, so that we are zeroing out the tax incentive for buildings to remain vacant, so that developers will say, oh, well, you know what, maybe I'll fix it up and rent it out.
Yeah.
Instead of using that as a tax write-off for the buildings down county that are fully, filled. I think that might be a better model for residents and developers and commercial realtors. Looking at the tax exemptions that we have for development and focusing it on improving commercial space instead of building new commercial space. Because when you're building new commercial space, you're creating vacancy somewhere else. So, again, developers have the right to build. I just don't necessarily think that we should be using tax dollars to incentivize new commercial space when we have so much vacant space already, scattered around the town.
Yeah, I'm hearing a theme of like making sure we're using our resources wisely, our infrastructure wisely,
Right.
balancing economic development with also the quality of life for those who are living in Yorktown and now have to deal with, as Chuck was saying, the extensive traffic that might result without proper planning.
Right. And listen, I mean, I've spoken to commercial developers. I've spoken to residents alike, and if we're building, there should be some sort of benefit for the residents. There should be some sort of offset for our taxes, but that's, we're not seeing that. And, our development and our new buildings is outpacing the investment that we're making in our infrastructure. So, they have to work hand in hand and grow together so that that they're supporting one another.
So I have to ask you, like, do you have like one white whale of a project, like something that's just you've run, this is your fourth time, and so like hearing from the community, from your personal long experience living in Yorktown, is there any one thing that you're just like, if I this?
There's, I think there's not one big whale of a, white whale of a project that I would want to say, oh, like this is what we could do. Although I will say that one of the things that I would have loved to have done, although I think that ship sailed, was, at the time, so for many years, Yorktowners will understand the reference. For many years, we had the former Turco's A&P, where Uncle Giuseppe's is now. A lot of people will understand that reference. That retail space was locked up with a lease. Nobody could rent it. Kmart went out of business. Same thing. That retail space got locked up with a lease. What I would have loved to have seen is, let's redevelop that area into a LEED certified community center, some sort of park. We use that as an anchor site, bringing people off of the bike trail to come into our town, stop, smell the roses, shop, spend some time, and really have sort of a sense of place in the heart of our downtown area. Anybody who shops at Uncle Giuseppe's will not want me saying unfortunately, because people love Uncle Giuseppe's.
I do love to.
But and it's great that those retail spaces are filled. Unfortunately, like TJ Maxx, which is also in that shopping center, basically just moved across the street. So, again, it's sort of, shops moving from one side of town to the other. It's not necessarily bringing in new business. We certainly have seen some new business growth, but I think it's really a long-term vision that I have, where we sort of grow with the best practices and what other communities are seeing, where the front-facing of our commercial spaces are inviting, transitioning to a more walkable community, so that people will park their cars and then walk into into the shopping area, where it's more of a sort of a streetscape kind of situation, where people are encouraged to linger, talk to neighbors, talk to friends, and I'd love to see us move in that direction. I think you see communities across the region really moving in that direction. I think we need to, just in order to address some of the transportation issues, some of the sustainability issues.
Yeah, so I'm hearing again a common theme of like prioritizing the development of quality of life, really making sure we're being planful and how we invest in development locally, really kind of ensuring that we're creating spaces for community to come together. And on your last point, and I think this goes to an article that you recently posted on your website, really thinking regionally and where like Yorktown fits in and its strengths, and making sure that we're investing in those areas, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for any community, any municipality, large or small, to work in isolation. You have to think regionally. Going back to what I started with in terms of where we are geographically, we are really at the center. So for us to work with Cortland and Peekskill, Somers, and to really start to think. Say again?
Crossroads.
Exactly. And to really think about, how do we work together, kind of building on each community's strength, without giving up our own unique identity, but coming together, in terms of the northern part of the county, to really improve and work on our economic development as a region, and work collaboratively. Because to me, it seems very short-sighted to think, oh, we're only going to focus on Yorktown's economy. I mean, the roads coming in and out of Yorktown lead to all of these other communities. We need to be able to work with them.
So if people want to get involved and get on the Jann train, and this train is going to pull into the station this year, and it's a big year for us, up and down ticket. How can they get involved?
Well, they can go to the website, which I hope we'll be able to provide a link, but it's jann4yorktown.com, JANN, the number 4 yorktown.com. And they can certainly reach out. That web form goes directly to me. We have all kinds of opportunities in terms of just meeting people, talking to people, phone calls, all manners of different volunteer opportunities. But the first step is just to reach out and we'll have a conversation.
Yeah, and then we're going to throw it up on screen here. And everyone who I've met that knows you just speaks so highly of the dedicated work that you've done in Yorktown, your business savvy and being able to own, like grow, sustain a small business, your ability to, and your track record of a commitment to nonprofits and community development across the town and the region. And you also got a shout out in the chat that you were completely unflappable during the live stream, which I think just says a lot about your character. Jann, it's always so nice to see you. Any parting words for folks to think about as they're thinking about getting involved this summer with Race's Up and Down ticket?
I just really would, encourage people, if it's, I'd love for them to get involved in my campaign, obviously, but get involved. And I think that there's an intimidation factor. People think, oh, it's, it's so unpleasant and it's politics, but it's neighbors. And, going, full circle moment here, I think that's also what sustains me and keeps me going is, just really realizing that this is just how communities function. This is how neighbors work together. And, when you look at it through that lens, it's far less intimidating and less othering. So, find somebody, reach out to all of the candidates, talk to them. We're all human beings. We all, trying to make a difference in our communities and find a campaign that you can really get behind and get involved, because campaigning is not a solo endeavor by any stretch. We really need people to roll up their sleeves and help us and get across the finish line.
Absolutely. This is how democracy works, and this is how representation works when neighbors step up to help neighbors. Jann, it's always so nice to talk to you.
A pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Talk soon.
All right, be well.
Bye. Everyone, that was Jann Mirchandani running for Yorktown Supervisor in a big year, and she's going to do it. And hopefully we'll all be there to help. Really always appreciate talking with her. And next week, we're going to continue the series, or actually 2 weeks. We're going to skip next week because next week I'm on vacation and folks in my household would be fairly mad if I was on live stream. But in 2 weeks, we're going to speak with Brett Yaris, who is running for Supervisor Putnam County, where we're going to talk about the importance of community college and trade school access, an issue that's near and dear to my heart, and I know to the hearts of many who are listening. So I would tune in 2 weeks, Thursday, May 21st, 9 p.m. Thank you all for joining us today, again on a Thursday night. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to elevate our local leaders and rising stars. There's so much going on, and I hope you get involved because that's what this is all about. Have a great night, everybody.